Shahuna bhavatu Shahano hunaktu Shahubirjankarvavahai Tejashina padhitamustu Ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now, Shweta, I am making you host.
Sir.
Please start the class.
Thank you, sir. I'll just share my screen.
Yeah, it is coming.
Okay. So today's topic that I'm going to take is crime scene investigation. So before, so you have always seen in movies and in some documentaries, crime thriller documentaries, that how crime scene is depicted. So basically we have a rough idea with the yellow tape surrounding the area of the crime scene. We have a rough idea of how a crime scene is depicted, or you can understand how crime scene is indicated in movies and stuff. So today we will learn about the more factual part of the aspect, because again, when we talk about movies, the only idea and depiction we have is through the references that we have in books and in movies. And when we talk about that, there are some inaccuracies and factual discrepancies that we can see. So I would like Ashmita or Payal, any one of you, to tell me what according to you is a crime scene investigation.
Ma'am, a crime scene investigation would entail in finding evidences that have been left behind after a crime has been committed. For example, if I consider a crime scene where a murder has been committed, so the crime scene investigation would entail regarding maybe to check if there are any kind of gunpowder residue, or the analysis of a blood splatter, or if there have been any kind of physical fight involved, so there should be things lying around everywhere, an inspection of those as well. So, and of course, searching for fingerprints, any kind of footprint that might have been left behind by the offender, and alike, these things alike.
Correct. So as you said, so crime scene investigation is basically involving all of these things, what we call as evidences. What are footprint, fingerprints, any residues remaining after a fight. All of these are what we term together as, we call it as evidence. So in order to understand crime scene investigation, first we'll see the definition, or we understand what crime scene is basically. So like you correctly put it, crime scene is a place where a incident might have occurred, a crime might have occurred, and the area surrounding that location is basically what we call as crime scene. So an area that surrounds the crime, the incident or the crime, and from wherein we can collect evidences regarding that crime, and therefore start our investigation. Okay, and when we talk about crime scene, one important thing about crime scene is that we have to have a quick response that should be, given during the investigation. Because if there is no rapid crime scene response given, then what happens is basically the evidences have a chance of getting tampered, or they may get destroyed. So when we talk about evidences getting tampered or destroyed, we have a very infamous case in India, the Arushi Talwar double murder case, right? So in that case, what happened was due to the intensity of the crime, many of the media reporters and many of the neighbors came into the house of the where basically the house was supposed to be the crime scene, but due to the lack of awareness by the media persons and the people, they rushed into the crime scene, and because of the because of their footprints and because of their mishandling of certain evidences, the crime scene was contaminated. So as a crime scene investigator, it is very important that we have to have a quick response as soon as the crime is reported. And therefore, therefore, because the main part of a crime scene investigation is basically collection of evidence and preserving them, right? So it becomes really important to be there on time and to preserve whatever evidence that remains as soon as possible. And to secure the crime scene and to be aware and to properly properly follow through the area and preserve the area and decrease the contamination basically. So basically, we can define crime scene investigation as a scientific technique which is used for preserving and collecting physical evidences. Correct? So when we talk about crime scene investigation, the person who is responsible for this investigation is known as the crime scene investigator or the crime scene examiner. So throughout this, we will be hearing a lot about evidences. We'll be hearing a lot about tampering these evidences. So I hope you are aware of what evidences and what tampering of evidences. Are you? Do you have any doubt?
No, ma'am.
So you are well aware of the term tampering of evidence, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. There are different types of crime scene. So first we are taking into, if we are a crime scene investigation, we should investigator, then we should definitely know what a crime scene is and what type of crime scenes are there. So there are different types of crime scene. When we talk in the concept of evidences, there are primary crime scene and the secondary crime scene. When we talk about primary crime scene, is the primary area where the crime might have taken place. So for example, if I tell you, if there is a robbery that has took place in a bank, suppose. So the bank becomes the bank or the area where the cash was stolen or the gold reserves were stolen would become the primary crime scene. And when we talk about secondary crime scene would be the, say suppose, again taking the same example of the robbery. When the robbers exit the place of the robbery till the place of, say suppose they have escaped through in the form of a vehicle, through the help of a vehicle. So suppose the exit point from the bank to the vehicle could become the secondary crime scene, because you can find some footprints, we can find some discarded elements, masks, or discarded gloves, or some weapons that they might have left behind in a hurry. So that path can become the secondary crime scene. Also, secondary crime scene could be also indicated, like suspects or the victims can also become a secondary crime scene. So Ashmita, tell me one thing. How do you think that a suspect or victim can become a secondary crime scene? Can you, do you think you can explain it?
A suspect becoming a secondary crime scene.
Yes.
Maybe, okay, I don't know if I'm 100% right or not.
Yeah,
but,
give it a shot.
If there's a physical fight,
yes,
there are sometimes maybe, the victim is going to scratch the offender.
correct.
Or the who is trying to cause any kind of harm. So there might be some skin samples that get stuck in the nails.
Correct.
That might even serve as a secondary crime scene, or that might help in the further analysis of the criminal or the perpetrator.
Correct. So like you correctly said, like you correctly pointed out, so when in a crime scene, especially in cases of sexual batteries or assaults, what happens is basically the suspect there might be some of the evidences that might be seen, that might be stuck under the fingernails of the victims, or the scratch or the wound marks that are that can be seen on the suspect can become a part of the evidence, and therefore can become part of the secondary crime scene. And also in cases where, say, suppose the murder has been taken place in one particular area, but the body was discovered from a second area, right? So suppose in some cases where the murder has been taken place inside a house, but the body has been recovered from a river or from a forest area. So that also becomes a secondary crime scene. In that example also, it is a secondary crime scene. Now we will discuss about the crime scene based on the geographical location. So, and why is it important is basically because when we think about the geographical location, as we are collecting evidences, it becomes really important for us to know the area, because we have to scout through all of that area to find further evidences. Correct. A major part of a crime scene investigator is to collect evidences and to have a keen and observant eye for collecting the evidences. Even if missing one evidences can lead to the case not being solved. So when we talk, so therefore crime scene based on geographical location is very important, because the method that we use for looking for these evidences changes depending on what or where the crime scene has taken place, for which we will be elaborating in the later slides. So the first is outdoor crime scene. Basically, it's self-explanatory. So basically, the crime scene that has taken a crime that has taken place in an open area, which has no boundaries, and specifically in public places, outside an enclosed space, basically. So, like for example, any accidents, they can come in an outdoor crime scene. When we talk about accidents, when two vehicles collide, or when deliberately a vehicle has hit another vehicle, so all of that area would become a crime scene. But challenges in outdoor crime scene is basically the collection of evidence itself, because outdoor crime scene has a wider scope, and it takes a lot of it takes a big team of searchers, crime scene investigators, to look for evidences in such scenarios, because the scope of evidence being scattered around is wide. Therefore, there's some limitation, some challenges when we talk about outdoor crime scene. And then we have indoor crime scene, which takes place in an enclosed space or within a boundary or within a four walls, can be included in indoor crime scene. Basically, when we talk about any crime that is such as a robbery or theft, that can come under that have taken place in an enclosed space at a home, a burglary at a home. So all of those will come in under indoor crime scene. And then we have conveyance or mobile crime scene. So conveyance is basically transportation, any crime that has taken place in any transportation or vehicle, such as some crimes like auto thefts, or some crimes like again, sexual batteries that may take place inside a car or any other transportation or vehicle. And so basically a crime scene that is moving, or which is enclosed, but at the same time, it is a moving object. Like we have again another case, the 2012 Nirbhaya case that we call. So it was the crime scene was a conveyance crime scene, because it had taken place inside the bus. Correct. So that will become a conveyance or mobile crime scene. Any doubts so far?
No, ma'am.
Okay, moving ahead. So what are the goals of a crime scene investigator? When we're talking about crime scene investigator, there are some of the qualities that are important in a crime scene investigator. They should be ethical. They should have a keen and observant, idea towards. They should be very keen and very much observant towards a crime scene, because in order to collect the evidences, they should have a very keen sense of collecting data and scientifically analyzing things around them. They should be very straightforward. They should have they should support scientific evidences. They should have a procedure for recognizing what all can be the evidences. They should have the ability to document and process and collect and pack all these evidences, because it becomes really important to maintain the chain of custody. When we talk about chain of custody, it is basically the idea of collection of the evidences, collecting it and preserving it, and then taking it to the FSLs, and then presenting it to the court. In all these three processes, it becomes really important for the evidences to be preserved. So these steps are called the chain of custody. Any disturbance in the chain of custody can lead to the evidences being inadmissible in the court. So basically, for an example, if in a crime scene we have, say, suppose found a fabric with blood stains on it. So as a crime scene investigator, we may take the fabric with the blood stain, and we will put it in a vial or a container, and then we will preserve it. Preserve it, seal it, label it according to the case number, according to the evidence number, and then we will take it to the FSL. And after the examination, we have to still maintain the preservation, so that when it is presented in the court, it should be the seal should not be broken. It should be clearly it should not be basically disputed that this evidence might have been tampered with. Okay, so that becomes a really big and important role of a crime scene investigator. So chain of custody, maintaining the chain of custody is very important. So, and then presenting and demonstrating your knowledge when, so according to Section 45 of Indian Evidence Act, court has the right to call in for an expert evidence, and we as crime scene investigators or forensic psychologists could be called upon in the court to give testimonies to give the expert testimony from our side regarding the case. So anything related to the case that needs expertise, because in the court they might not be that aware about the scientific reasons or the psychological reason behind certain evidences present. So we as an expert can go to the court and can present our expertise expertise to the court. And while presenting these expertise, we should be able to connect and demonstrate how each and every evidences are connected to the you have to basically connect the crime to the criminal, correct? So these evidences help us in that format, and we should therefore be able to demonstrate our skills and abilities in front of the judge in order for him to assess whether this expert testimony can be taken into consideration and whether this evidence can be taken into consideration. So basic goals of crime scene investigator is collect the evidences, preserve the evidences, maintain the chain of custody, and demonstrate their knowledge and skills and abilities as a crime scene investigator or examiner. So what are the duties of a crime scene investigator? So as a crime scene investigator, we should be able to document the scene. When we talk about documenting the scene, it involves photography. In some cases, videography is allowed, but most of the time, photography, sketches, and note making is the main duty of a crime scene investigator. When we talk about note making, we have to also maintain a log record wherein who have entered the crime scene, who have not who have entered the crime scene for collection of evidence. So because as a crime scene investigator, we are not only dealing with ourselves and the crime scene, we are dealing with a lot of other people who work with us as a team, correct? We should be able to demonstrate our leadership also as a crime scene investigator, because when we talk about collecting fingerprint or collecting footprint, we are not the one responsible for directly collecting all of this evidences. So for that, the special experts in that particular field, like you said, toxicology or other field, like again fingerprint or other latent prints like footprints, for all of their collection, there would be other investigators coming in to collect the samples, right? So we have to keep a log record, a document about everything about when they are going to, when they have entered the crime scene, when they have exited the crime scene, what evidences they have taken along with them for examination. All of these things should be recorded, and photography is really important. Every evidence is numbered from one or how for one to n, however number of evidences that we find. I will just show it in the next scene. Yeah. So in the first picture, you can see the evidence is the number 5 is the evidence number, and it's basically a remain of a bullet. So you can see the scales are also kept in order to measure the bullet's size, so that when the evidence is presented or when there is cross examination against the evidence, uh, it is proved that this is the same bullet that was found on the crime scene that is being presented in the court, because there is a chance that during the exchange in the chain of custodies, these evidences can be switched easily. So to understand and to maintain that chain of custody, photographing the taking a photograph of the evidence becomes important. So therefore the scales are kept in order to understand the dynamic, to understand the size of the picture. So generally when we take photographs, we are not able to understand what size the image is, right? So what size the object is in the picture. So therefore the scales help in understanding the width and the length of the object, so in order to cross verify during the trial. And then we have identifying the evidence again. If you know what, if you go through so we have a format of search. We search the area as soon as we come in a crime scene. We have some, again, I'll be coming into in the next slide. We search the area, and therefore we look for all the evidences that might be possibly helpful for the case. We do not want to take in all of the objects lying around in a crime scene, correct? Because we have to correctly identify which objects would be helpful and which objects might not be helpful. Say suppose if there is a Ashmita, can you answer this question for me? If say suppose in a crime scene there is a knife that is covered in blood, and next to it again there is a knife, but it's not covered in blood. So what would be your priority, or what would be the evidence that you will take in?
The knife that's covered in blood.
Exactly. So because the knife that is covered in blood could possibly be a part of that crime, correct? So as an investigator, we should also have a keen eye in understanding whether that evidence is useful or not, correct? We cannot, if say suppose a crime has taken place, suppose a burglary has taken place inside a house, we can, there are broken glasses, there are some weapons that are found, and there's some money lying around. So all of that will become the part of evidence. The furniture that is lying around in the house, or any other any other thing that is lying around scattered in the house cannot become, let's say, suppose in a panic, the robber or the burglar has scattered some, scattered by chance some, or he has knocked down some vase or something. So that may not become a part of evidence. But if the broken vase has some blood stains or some, print on it, some fingerprint on it, then it can become a part of our evidence. So we have to also, as a crime scene investigator, we also have to keep in mind whether or not that would become a part of our evidences. And so we will have to, again, properly process and collect the evidence. When we talk about processing, we talk about collecting the evidences. Say, suppose it's a blood. If it's the blood is dried, then we probably will take it in a vial or we'll preserve it in a container, not in a vial, sorry, in a container. And we'll scrap the dried blood and we'll put it in a container. And if it's say, suppose if it's blood that is a little wet or it's not dried yet, you can take the sample by using a swab or a cotton swab and collect it and put it in a Ziploc bag. So, and if there are pieces of glasses, we can take it and put it in a container and seal it. And again, the complete process of labeling it also. And then if there is, say, suppose, so basically the second image that you see to the right is the kit. Basically, you can see some containers, some vial, the red tape that we generally use while sealing the crime area. There are evidence bag and there is Ziploc bags available. There are a pair of gloves, marker, all scales. These are the things that are there in an investigator's hand, so that they are ready for collecting and preserving the evidences. Then they have to submit the evidence. So basically submit the evidence to the FSLs for further examination. And then they have to write additional report that would support them during the trial process. Okay. So how do crime scene investigators preserve different crime scenes? So professionals basically have to use, like we've seen before, there's a yellow tape here. So that is used for preserving or barricading the areas surrounding the crime, so that, again, the evidences are not contaminated or they are not destroyed or tampered with. Then they have to wear gloves, jumpsuits, goggles, face masks, so as to protect them from any other any odor or smell that is left behind in the crime scene. They have to wear feet coverings so that they don't leave their footprints in the crime scene. Wear gloves so that no fingerprint is left from their side. So all of this is really important steps as a crime scene investigator. So you can see here, this is the photo of a photo before going into a crime scene. You should be covered, or you should wear these instruments like a hood covering. So it's called a pipe. It's basically a kit for protecting, preserving the crime scene area before entering the crime scene area. Also, there are eye covers that they use. There are latex gloves that you use. There are shoe covers, mostly of plastic covering. And then while entering the crime scene, scientists and investigators must look for physical evidence, look for track evidence that is left from a car or shoe. So basically, the tires of the car can leave a mark, which is called skid marks, or any other tire marks that can be seen. So we can understand whether the person who has committed the crime has exited by the use of vehicle, or have they run on their foot. And also, as a crime scene investigator, first of all, we should also establish the possible breaking or entering point to understand whether the crime has been taken place by an outsider, or whether the crime, if there, in most of the cases when there are families involved, when a family member commits a crime against another family member, the police have proved those cases through the help of understanding that there was no break-ins or there was no forced entry from outside or exit to determine that an outsider might have participated or might have committed the crime. So therefore, that becomes really important to understand whether there is an entry or exit point. So say suppose, again, processing will become different in different cases, right? So when we talk about a burglary, we need to find a exit and entry point, because a burglar has to come through one point and exit through one point. But if we're talking about, say suppose, sexual assault cases, in such cases, we will be looking for evidences such as, first of all, we will have to take into consideration the victims. Any medical care that is required for the victims should be provided, which is actually the job of the first responders. So first responders are basically the police or probably the medical team who come in to respond to a crime, who are the first responders of the crime. So first of all, as crime scene investigators, we should look for such evidences that we should basically look for the welfare of the people who are present or who are injured in that situation. And then later, we can understand whether, say suppose in a sexual assault case, whether the victim has some bruises or has any fluid in their body that might be used as evidence, seminal fluids, or they might have some fabric of the perpetrator, or the blood stains of perpetrators, or any such evidences should be looked after. And any fingerprint that can be collected. So basically, again, and not every crime scene is different. So no crime scene would be similar to the previous crime scene. So it becomes really important to understand how the crime scene is, and to take into consideration what type of crime has been committed and what way should the processing take place. So, and all these evidences should be documented, because again, the ultimate goal of all of these evidence is to be presented in front of a court, correct? To be presented in the trial. So if the defense would suggest that the evidence has been tampered, or the crime scene has been contaminated, or there was no chain of custody maintained for the evidence, what happens is basically the evidence will be considered inadmissible in the court, and the perpetrator might be free from the trial. So that could be a scenario that can happen. So as a crime scene investigator, we have a really important role that we play when we talk about collection of evidence and preservation of evidences. And this is basically a house that was burgled. So you can see that the window is broken. So this was basically the point of entry for that in this crime scene. You can see a damaged window. The fan on the window has fallen down. Now, when you look at this photograph, it's a wide angle photograph. So when we are documenting the photograph, when we are documenting in the form of photographs, we are supposed to take wide angle photos, close-ups as well, because when we take wide angle, we can prove that the close-ups that have been taken were part of the crime scene itself, because again, there can be a possibility that a window, a close-up of some other window has been taken just to create evidence. So therefore, for every crime scene, it should be noted that when you are photographing the crime scene, the crime scene should be taken from both wide angle as well as close up. And it's the same case, the burglary case, where the hammer and the broken glass has been found in the trash can. So basically, these probably might have been the weapons that were used to um, break the window and carry out the burglary. When we talk about physical evidences, we should first of all know what all are the physical evidences. What are the possible physical evidences that we are supposed to collect from the crime scene? If we don't know what we are looking for, we would never know how to collect those evidences. So the important and basic physical evidences that most of the crime scenes have in common are blood stains, the seminal stains, hair, fiber or thread, glass, paint, firearm, latent prints, fingerprints, footprints, tire marks, tool marks, question document, flammable liquids, narcotics. So again, blood stains, seminal stains, hair, fabric or thread are mostly seen in crimes that involve physical assault or a murder case, or say suppose um, sexual assault case, right? When we talk about glass or paint, you can see glass or paint in burglary cases or in cases of hit and run. So glass and paint can be seen. Firearm can be seen in, again, burglary case or in the case of murders. Then there are latent prints. Latent prints are something that can be found if there is any contact that happens between the perpetrator. So again, when we talk about all of these types of physical evidence, the basic idea of collecting physical evidence comes from a principle called Lokhart's principle of exchange, Lokhart's principle of exchange. So basically, he said that he believed that whatever, if a crime is committed in the crime scene, any physical exchange leaves a trace. So basically, say suppose an example of let's take an example of a crime okay, let's take an example of a crime where a theft has occurred, right? So when the person who enters the crime scene, say suppose it's raining outside and his or her legs or shoes have mud in it. So basically, when he enters the crime scene to commit the crime, he leaves a trace in the form of trail of mud that is left behind from his shoes. Correct? So basically, the Lokhart's principle of exchange claims that any exchange if there is any exchange of physical evidences, then it leaves a trace behind. Okay, so based on that principle itself, the entire concept of forensic science has been developed. So it is a very important important principle in forensic science. And then we have tire marks also can occur in say in hit and run cases, or as I said, when there is a robbery happening in a bank, maybe the tire marks would be important in order to understand the escape route of the robbers. And then question document is basically any documents that are available in the crime scene. Say suppose if it's apparently when a police or investigator as a first respondent come into a crime scene and they suspect it's probably suggested that it's a case of suicide, but the police might suspect a foul play, and in such cases, if there is any notes left behind by the victim, so those notes can be compared in order to understand whether whether the same victim has written the same note or not. So question document is basically where such documents can be examined and verified for handwriting in the form of handwriting analysis, or say suppose if there's a dispute in a will or any such cases, so any signatures that are disputed, all of that would come under question documents. And flammable liquids, again, in case of larceny, this flammable liquids can become a very important evidence. And narcotics, if the drugs are found in the crime scene, so it can be established whether the victim, whether the perpetrator was under the influence of some kind of drugs or not. All of that can be established from such evidences. Then we will come to search techniques. So search technique is very important because, as we have discussed now, evidence is important, but in order to get those evidences, we need to have a search technique so that we don't contaminate the scene, correct? So there are different types of search technique that are used depending on, like I said before, it will be depending on the geographical location of the crime that is committed. So when we talk about the geographical location, if it's a crime that has occurred, if it's an indoor crime, then mostly we use spiral search method, because this method is useful because it can be used in smaller areas and it's very effective when collecting data. So basically, the spiral search method is basically where the searching officer would start from one focal point in the crime scene, or they may fix a center point, and then they will go around in a spiral in a clockwise or counterclockwise direction in the entire crime scene. So if you think about it, in an outdoor crime scene, the spiral search method may not become possible, correct? Because the area in question is wide, and therefore going in spiral and finding finding for the evidence would become really difficult. So we will so spiral search method is used in a confined space or in an indoor crime scene method, in an indoor crime scene only. So it would look like this. So in the first image you can see it's in the form of a spiral. So say suppose when I talk about a robbery happening in a bank, so probably the locker could be the center point or the focal point that the investigator might keep, and from around there he may proceed in a spiral route in order to understand where the evidences are, where the evidences can be found. So or say suppose if a murder has occurred, so the site where the body was found could be a focal point that the crime scene investigator discusses, and then they go around that focal point or that center point and then look for evidences. And then we have grid search method. So grid search is a variation of strip search method, basically putting it in putting the larger thing into smaller categories. So it is also more popular when we are talking about an outdoor crime scene. So the searches are doubled and they are perpendicularly shifted in the area for the search. So again, when we talk about outdoor crime scene, it is always very time consuming because of the area that is involved. And the examiner very methodically moves from one point to another in the form, and it looks like, the movement looks like a grid. That's why it's called a grid search method. So it allows the crime scene investigator to, thoroughly search the area without missing out on any point. So like you can see in this second image, in the grid method, there is a start point and then there is an end point. So they might start from one point, they go to one end, the opposite end, and then they go to the other end, and in the form of a grid. So they form a grid and then the search is conducted. And then we have strip search method. Basically, again, it is also used in outdoor crime scene. So a searcher can walk down the lane parallel to other searchers. So there are different, again, when I said outdoor crime scene involves more than one investigator, right? So as to collect the evidences effectively and quickly also. And since due to the area, we need more manpower. So they walk down the lane parallel to each other. So when one searcher gets to the end of the lane, they reverse their direction and walk back adjacent to the lane they just searched. So this process is continued till the entire crime scene is searched. Okay. So if one searcher finds evidence, then the other searcher will stop until the evidence is properly processed and they receive additional information. So like here, likewise here, you see there are 2 points. They start parallelly and they move around till they are back to that point again. So basically thoroughly searching for each and every area of the crime scene. Then we have zone or sector search, which is used when the search area is particularly large. So again mostly in outside sectors. It is also called quadrant search because it's divided into smaller parts. And you can see likewise the bigger area is divided into 4 parts, and that each of the 4 parts is divided into much more smaller 4 parts. So it becomes easier to search and to not miss out on any of the area while searching for evidences. So I'm taking the class still here only for today. We will be continuing the class. So the next class is on forensic steps of forensic investigation. So in that class, we will be looking in detail of how to collect some of the evidences. Again, we can only go through general aspect of it, but we will be looking in more details of how we are going to collect evidences, how the chain of custody is maintained, and what are the steps in forensic investigation. So this was just an introduction to what crime scene investigation is and how we search the crime scene investigation for evidences, and how we proceed in general aspect. But in the next class, we will be looking in more detail about steps of forensic investigation and each and every step, and how to preserve and how to process the evidences that we have collected. Any doubts, Ashmita, Payal?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So I'll end the meeting. Thank you, Ashmita.